Hello, everybody, and welcome to another AZD community call. This is the month of July, and we have got a fantastic lineup for you. We've listened to your feedback from last month, and we are super excited to be sharing some really wonderful stuff with you today. I'm joined here with Grace and Kristen, and a whole bunch of other people who are backstage in the StreamYard studio, and we're going to get to that throughout this episode. So say hello.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
I'm just realizing now that you said it's July that I put August on the slides instead of July.
We will caveat that one. We will fix that one for you in post-production, but it's absolutely fine. So welcome to July. And this is the July call. We've got a fantastic agenda lined up. And I'm joined here with Kristen and Grace, who are part of the product team themselves, and myself, Liam Hampton. I am a senior cloud advocate and software engineer here at Microsoft. Grace, let's pop onto the agenda. What's on the next slide? Oh, we have got a lovely agenda. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the community contributions that you wonderful people who have been contributing to the project, as well as all the people at Microsoft as well. So given it all, this project and this product and service would not be anything without you all as well. Your valuable input, whether it be feedback or your contributions as code. We have then got a AI and ML endpoint demo, who is going to be presented by Wallace Breezer. We have got a Python LlamaIndex template demo from Marlene Mangami and Laurie Voss. So again, another brilliant demo there. We've got a RAG template demo from Pamela Fox. And RAG, for those of you who don't know, is retrieval augmented generation. And we are then finally going to finish up with an Aspire and AZD demo by Chris Ayres. So again, a super packed agenda. We listened to your feedback. We've got the demos in this month, and we're super excited to share them with you. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Grace, who's going to take us through the team.
Yeah, so just another quick little slide. This is the team, lots of PMs, designers, research, engineers, and of course, Liam, our cloud advocate. So if you ever want to find us, all of our GitHub handles are on here, and some of us are on X as well, if you want to reach out to anybody there. And then next, we just want to, again, like Liam was saying, thank our wonderful community contributors. We have 4 that we're calling out this month. So the first is Kay Destin. Not sure what their name is via their GitHub profile, but they resolved a crash when using AI endpoint and Python 3.8. Basically, like there was a variable called list and it needed to be capitalized instead of lowercase. So they went through and fixed that. Johan, he enabled Key Vault to be used in template deployment. That was kind of just like enabling a parameter. And then Richard, he updated an installation link for, I think I made a typo there. I think that should be Golang, not Goland. So that's what that one is. And then the last one is Ryan, and he contributed a new template. It's called Azure Serverless App with Angular and MSAL. And you can find that and use it on Awesome AZD. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. Like Liam said, AZD wouldn't be what it is without our community contributors. And so now we're going to go ahead and get right into our first demo with Wallace for AI ML endpoint. This is something we announced in the AZD build blog. So it's the build recap. And if you want to read more, you can find it there. Wallace, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Wallace. I'm a dev on the AZD product team. So today, like Grace said, we're going to go ahead and show you some of the new features that were recently released to support integration with Azure AI Studio and Azure Online Endpoint deployments. So just like deploying any other type of app to Azure, like app services or container apps, you now can deploy apps directly to online endpoints in AI Studio. So before I dive into the demo, I'm going to tell you about a couple kind of starter templates that are there for you to kind of help you get going. So these are all up on our Azure samples repo. There's this AZD AI starter. This is a great one that you can use just to kind of get your feet wet, play with some OpenAI models and kind of go from there. This will deploy all the required resources that you need to Azure. The next one we have is the AI Studio starter, and this kind of gives you the OpenAI models that you need, as well as a whole AI Studio project that will get spun up, again, with all the required resources that you need. Then the one that we're going to take a look at today is this Contoso app template. And this one was built off of the AI Studio starter. So this gives you all the AI Studio bits that you need, as well as the code to have like a chat-based application using AI Studio and OpenAI models under the covers. So I've gone ahead before this meeting and ran through an AZD up for this template. So all I did was run an AZD up command after I initialized the Contoso app template. And clicking into the provisioning progress, you can see we have all of these components that were created for us. So if I just swap over to my Azure portal screen here, so this gives us the Azure AI project and hub and all the dependent services like the AI services, key vault, storage accounts, container registries, everything that the AI Studio needs to deploy the different aspects of your application. So once we ran AZD up, we created all those resources. And then there's a post-provision hook here. So that's kind of like a custom script that you as a developer would write to do any extra stuff for your application. In this particular case, this hook went ahead and kind of seeded our data plane, right? So it added some entries into Cosmos DB. It configured indexes on our Azure search instance and got everything ready to go. And then it went ahead and deployed our application to the Azure online endpoint here. So the links are kind of big right now, so it looks a little messy. But if we swap over to the AI Studio here, we could go into the deployments link on the left here, and any deployments that you have made to, whether it's an OpenAI model or to your custom online endpoint, you'll see those in the deployment section here. So this is the deployment that AZD did on our behalf. So if we click into this model, we can see that this deployment has succeeded. It's using the custom model that was configured in our application, and I can show you how that was set up in a second, and everything is ready to go. So just to kind of show you the result of this, let me just go ahead to the test tab here, and I'm going to just paste our sample input into this query. And so this is basically just a chat request. And the question is, tell me about hiking shoes. And we're passing in our customer ID. And we'll click the test button. And that should just take a second. And then we'll get a JSON payload back. So you can imagine that it would be done with an interactive chat experience. And so here we have an answer, and it has a whole bunch of great stuff about hiking shoes and the different products available that would be displayed inside of a chat experience. So super easy to get this deployed. So let me swap over to the actual code. And so this is the Contoso chat application repo opened up in VS Code. A couple things we're going to look at here is the azure.yaml file. So it's pretty basic overall. We have this one post-provision script that I talked about before. This is doing our data seeding that is required by our application. And then we have one service that we defined within our azure.yaml. So this is our chat service. We have our new host type that we support called ai.endpoint. And then the rest is custom configuration for this endpoint. So it is a Python-based application, and we have configuration available here to specify custom environments, custom models, and deployment attributes that we want to set up on our application. All these reference YAML files use the standard YAML definitions available and documented for the standard Azure CLI for dealing with environments, models, and deployments. And just to kind of show you how straightforward they are, we'll just go into our environment.yaml. This configure some inference configuration for some routes, as well as a path to a Docker file that this uses behind the scenes, which this particular one is based off of a prompt flow runtime. So pretty straightforward stuff here. And let's see, what else do I want to show you? That's it. So pretty overall easy to use. Before this feature was available on AZD, you would have to do a ton of custom scripting to generate the correct environments and models and deployments and all the orchestration involved to get those up on Azure. So just a quick little demo to show you how easy it is to get started. You can either clone this Contoso chat app and use that as your starting point, or one of those other templates. And if not, any of those don't meet your needs, we have the awesome AZD template site that has a slew of other kind of AI use case specific scenarios that might be interested for you. So that's it. I'll hand it back to Grace and team. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thanks, Wallace. This was awesome demo.
Amazing stuff. No, absolutely brilliant. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat and we will get around to that one. Wallace also has access to the chat, so he can answer them for you. And yeah, I think head on over to the deck now, isn't it? So who's up next? Kristen, I think we'll hand over to you.
Yeah, so we've been working with Lori from LlamaIndex and Marlene from our cloud advocacy team, and we have been building out a couple of LlamaIndex templates that you can deploy to Azure. So we have a JavaScript template and we have a Python template, and today we're going to pull in Marlene and Lori. Welcome to the call. So good to see you both here.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
So Lori, we'll start off with you. If you want to go ahead and give us kind of some background on what we should know about LlamaIndex before we dive into the details of the template. Can you tell us more about your goals here and like how LlamaIndex on Azure is important to everything that you're doing?
Sure. Do you want me to launch straight? Do you want me to answer that question, or want me to launch into my slides?
You can take it where you'd like to go. Yeah, I know you already have some slides.
Yeah. I mean, I will get to the answer to that question after I've given the context, I think. As Kristen said, I'm Laurie. I'm VP of Developer Relations at LlamaIndex. In a former life, I was one of the co-founders of NPM Inc. So some of you may know me from then, but these days, instead of JavaScript, I'm talking about AI. What I've prepared is just a quick introduction to LlamaIndex, so you understand why it's important and why it's useful to have these AZD templates that we're about to demo. So I'm just going to very, very quickly talk about what it is, why you should use it, and what it can do for you, including retrieval augmented generation, document parsing, structured data extraction, and autonomous agents. So LlamaIndex is a bunch of things. Starting with the most obvious, we are a framework for putting together generative AI applications. We are a framework in Python and TypeScript. Both are obviously open source and free to use, but that is not all that LlamaIndex is. We also have a service called LlamaParse that will parse complicated documents in any format into a form that can be understood by an LLM. This is critical for a lot of Gen AI applications, because if your LLM can't understand what it's reading, you'll get nonsense results. And LlamaParse is designed to demonstrably improve what your LLM application can do. It's free to use for up to 1,000 pages a day. You can sign up today at cloud.llamaindex.ai. We also have an enterprise offering, and I'm not going to do a big long sales pitch, but if what you want to do is stuff documents into one end and run retrieval augmented generation on the other end without having to think too much about the stuff in the middle, then this is the service for you. And you can sign up for that and sign up for our waitlist. You'll get all of these links at the end, by the way, so don't worry that I'm skimming through them quite quickly. Another thing that we do is Llama Hub, which is our registry of free open source helper software. So if you need to connect to get your data out of any database in the world, we've got that. Do you want to get your data out of Notion or Slack or Salesforce? No problem. Do you need to store your data in a vector store? Lots of LLM applications need to do that. We support all of them. We also support every LLM that's out there: OpenAI, Mistral, Anthropic, over 30 different LLMs, including local ones like Llama 3, which was just reintroduced yesterday. And if you want to build an agent and you want some pre-built tools to do that, we have dozens of agent tools already built for you. So why should you use LlamaIndex? And the simple answer is because we will help you go faster. You're a developer, you have limited time, you have actual business and technology problems to solve. You don't want to get stuck figuring out the basics. We've solved a bunch of the foundational problems for you, so you can focus on being novel and interesting with your solution. Our focus as a platform is getting you into production and delivering actual business value. So let's talk very briefly about what this framework can actually do for you. I mentioned retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, the basics of which I'm going to assume you already know because we've been talking about it already. But if not, this link at the bottom will take you to a quick explanation in our documentation. But there are a bunch of steps in a RAG application. First, you need to get your data from somewhere, whether it's a file system or a database or an API. Our connectors will do all of that for you and turn them into compatible document objects, so you don't need to figure out how to make them interoperable. The next step is parsing. We have a bunch of built-in parsers, but like I mentioned, the real secret weapon is LlamaParse. It's going to take documents your LLM can't understand, like Word docs, PDFs, PowerPoints, Excel sheets, and turn them into data that you can actually use. Next, you have to embed your data. This means turning them into vectors for a RAG application. We can use third-party APIs like OpenAI to do that, or we can use local embedding models downloaded from Hugging Face. And like a lot of things in LlamaIndex, this is a one-liner. Once your data is embedded, you have to store it somewhere, probably in a vector database. We integrate with every vector database that exists, so you don't need to learn all the different APIs. We take care of that for you. And to use your embedded data, you need to be able to retrieve it. LlamaIndex will embed your query, find relevant chunks in your vector store, and return those chunks. You can then do all sorts of stuff to those chunks, like applying a re-ranker to further improve your relevance. All of this stuff is completely customizable. And then usually what you want to do with the relevant chunks you've retrieved is send them to an LLM along with your query. There's a lot of ways to do this, and we do all of them. We'll give you a query engine and take care of it for you. And of course, we don't just do this stuff for text. We can do it for images as well. You can embed image data. You can query for images by other images, upload an image and get similar images, all that sort of thing. And if what you want to do with all of your RAG data is create a chatbot that talks to some documents, you absolutely don't need to build a chatbot from scratch. We have a pre-built chatbot for you, open source, that you can spin up, customize, and modify to your heart's content. It is called Create Llama, and that is what we're going to be demoing today. It's what you're going to see deployed today with AZD. By the way, if what you want to do is create a bot that chats with you in Slack, we've got one of those pre-built as well. But I said right at the beginning that we're going to be talking about agents, because you're probably not just going to build a RAG app. RAG is going to be part of the story. But you're going to want to build agents because they produce better results than plain RAG, and they can do more than just answer queries. They can take actions for you. LlamaIndex has first-class support for agents. Tools are central to how agents work. And in LlamaIndex, that is how you create an agent. In this example, I'm just creating an agent from an arbitrary Python function. You give those tools to an LLM, and it figures out how to use those tools to answer your question, which is an incredibly powerful mechanism for putting together an AI-powered application. And your tools don't have to be functions. They can also be query engines. All that effort that we just put into making a RAG pipeline is super useful when making an agent. And that can query data and not just perform actions. We also, I swear I'm nearly done, we recently released a new framework called Llama Agents. It's specifically for deploying multi-agent systems. It turns each agent into a web service for you, and it runs a message queue and an orchestrator for you, allowing you to develop and scale each agent independently and process many tasks in parallel. All of this was just a very quick intro. I don't have time to dig into any more into what LlamaIndex can do, but if your interest is piqued, you can follow this link, which I believe has also been in the chat, to a bevy of resources to learn more, including all of the slides that I just presented. Thanks, and now over to Marlene for the demo.
Great, thank you, Lori. Super informative and very exciting. I feel like I was muted for a sec. But yeah, very informative. I would like to share my screen. And so like Lori said, we have been working together on some examples to get you started. LlamaIndex allows you to be able to create applications in a short amount of time as possible. And so we have actually been working on a way that you can get started with Azure OpenAI and LlamaIndex just with a few lines or commands in your terminal. And we are using AZD for today's example. As you can see on the screen, we'll be building the chat app that Lori shared, but in this example, it is specifically using Azure OpenAI as the LLM. And so this will hopefully be a quick start for anyone that's using AZD and that's to that. So you can find this specific template. I think the team is posting it somewhere in the comments, but you should be able to find it there. So I will just show an example of how to actually get this app up and running. So the first thing you can do is just go on GitHub Codespaces. I already have a Codespaces open here in my browser, and I have written out a README to hopefully make this process easy and intuitive for people that are trying to get up and running. So first thing you want to do is you want to log into AZD, and to do that you can use the command AZD auth login. In this repo, by the way, I'm in the README, and you can just scroll to this section, which is GitHub Codespaces. I think that Codespaces is the easiest way if you want to just get up and running as quickly as possible. So I would recommend that. And so when you use AZD auth login, I've already logged in just because you have to go through an authentication process, which is great because there's more security, but I've already done that. And then after that, to be able to deploy our code and provision all of the resources that we need, you can go ahead and just type in to your terminal AZD app. And it will ask you for an environment name. So maybe we can call this LlamaIndex. Let's call it Azure, like that. Oh, they're saying it's invalid. I don't know why. I think it's because I put I'd say LlamaIndex Azure. I put a space bar, which is the reason why I think it was saying that it's invalid. And then after that, it's going to ask us for a subscription. I'm going to use my demo subscription. And then I'm going to choose a region for this specific demo. I would recommend that we use Sweden Central, but you can use a couple of other ones, but this is the one that is going to have the specific model we are using available in that region. And generally, Sweden Central has like a lot of the Azure OpenAI models available. So I would recommend that one as well. So this process of actually having the deployment work will take some time. So we are just going to switch over to my terminal to continue this tutorial, or just continue this demo. And I've already run in this space. It's still a code spaces, but in a different tab. I've already run AZD up, and I've already logged in as well. So we can jump to this command here. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to go into our backend folder, and then we want to create a Python virtual environment. That will just make it so that it's safe to be able to install all the Python dependencies that are necessary, and then we can activate that environment. I'm just copying everything to show you that you can use the README to kind of help you step through all of the steps as quickly as possible. So let's see. Oh, okay. No dependencies to install or update. I think because I've already installed the dependencies before this. I'm hoping that's what that means. So then we're going to move, after you run AZD up, you should have a number of different environment variables that have been created for you. And those will be in a .env file that's under .azure. So you will, if you scroll and you open there, I have this file here, and that's generated for you automatically when you run AZD up. And so we want to be able to move that into the right folder to be able to actually utilize those environment variables. So we're going to just run that specific command. And after this, we want to go ahead and generate some embeddings out of the data that we have. So this sample, when you go onto the GitHub, will come with this 101 PDF that comes from LlamaIndex, and it just has information about different mailing things, just stuff about like mailing parcels and things like that. So that's just to get you started as an example. But at the same time, so I'm just going to run this. Oops, sorry. I'm just going to run that command so that while I talk, and we can just do that. And that should run as expected. But one of the other things that you can do with this getting started template is add your own PDFs, add your own documents to get started. So I created a PDF that had a grocery list for myself. I also created a PDF for Wimbledon results that was on recently. I'm a big tennis fan, so that will let all of that information be embedded, everything that's in this data folder. So it will all be available for your chatbot to use. So the next thing that we want to do is install our front-end dependencies. So this is an application that uses both Fast API and some TypeScript in the front end. And so we also need a couple of dependencies there. I should have had those installed already, so that shouldn't take a lot of time. Now we're ready to actually deploy the application and see it running. So we're going to go back to the backend application, and we're going to start our Fast API server. So just run these commands, and that should get the server running as expected. There are some trace loop errors that if you want to use that, you can like resolve those, but it won't cause like any issues. And something I will mention that is a little bit, it's specific to GitHub, to Codespaces, is that you do need to change the visibility of the ports to public. So we're just going to change that visibility right now. And that's going to allow it for this to run as expected. I think that's something that people are working on to like help so that things still run. But yeah, we want to go ahead and then open a new terminal. So this is our Python terminal where we have the Fast API server running. And then here, we are going to go ahead and PD into the front end. And we can go ahead and run npm run dev, and this will launch our application. So that should be ready to go now. I can just show that I'm okay with it running on this access port. And hopefully, if the demo gods are friendly today, yes, it ran as expected. So this should work. And for example, here is a question we can ask about sending parcels to France. And it will give us some information there about that. Like I mentioned, I put in some personal data about groceries, so I can ask it what groceries, or let's say what's on my grocery list. And it has that information too available to us. We can also ask questions about Wimbledon, because I added those in as well. So we can say, who won tennis matches? No. I would say, yeah. So it gives us some sources of the ladies singles, and that was from this specific day, which I think was like July 7th or something like that. So this is very cool that you can just go ahead and if you want to change out which data you want to chat with, you can just add it to, like you can remove PDFs or you can add them to be able to chat with that data. And like Lori said, you can connect also your Slack or Notion or something like that. One thing I also want to quickly just mention for the end of this demo is that you can also personalize the demo as well to make it a bit more personal to you. So if you go to, I'm trying to remember where it was, but if you go to, I think it's header.txt here, and I'm just going to change this and I'm going to say this is Marlene's assistant. And you can, that's not how you call this, assistant. And then I'm going to also change the source of the image. We're going to change the image to Marlene. And there's another place I think I'm supposed to change this image as well. But let's look for llama.png. And we can change it here as well. let's have marlene.png there. And if we reload that in our server, we can see it's using my very cute assistant picture here. And that's quite nice. We can also change up the color scheme as well. If you're interested in like changing the colors, you can do that too I think you have to go to app and global.css, and we can make, say for example, we wanted to change the colors here, we could just do that. So I'm just going right now to background gradient, and I'm gonna just change everything to purple because that's my favorite color. So let's do that, and then let's save that. Did that change properly to purple? Yeah. And if we save that, the app becomes more purple, and you can play around with that to make it as personal as you would like for it to be, and it should still work as expected. So that is the demo, and again, you can find the link in the comments. Thanks.
That was super cool. Thank you both. Yeah, that was brilliant. I think having an easy way to create these chatbots and agents and all these kind of things, it's becoming so powerful now. Absolutely adore seeing demos like this, especially if it's being assisted by tools like AZD. There was actually one question in the chat, and it was coming from Pamela Fox. So I'm just going to show this one here. It was also answered, and it says, it looks like there's no vector store. Is it doing an in-memory search? So Laurie, I know you've answered that in the chat, but do you want to just go over your answer a little bit now whilst we have a minute?
Oops, sure. So like I said in my slides, LlamaIndex can connect to any vector store. By default, we have a built-in in-memory vector store, and that is what the demo is using by default.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. If you have any more questions, throw them in the chat. And again, Laurie, Marlene, you both got access to that one. They will be sure to answer them. So with this, what have we got up next? I think Grace, you've got the slides, haven't you? You can just prep. Right, we've got a RAG template demo by Pamela Fox. So I'm going to bring up Pamela onto the screen. She is a Python cloud advocate. So hello, Pamela. How are you doing?
Hello. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you here. You're in the Python team. You're a sister team to me. You're in my organization. It's great working with you, and we're super stoked to have you on the call again today to go through a RAG template. So I'm going to share your screen, and I'll let you take it away.
All right. So we've already talked about RAG in this call today. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, and we've seen actually multiple demos of RAG. Obviously, it's a very popular thing to do using large language models. So this repo is doing RAG on a PostgreSQL database. The ones we just saw from Marlene was doing RAG on like documents, like PDFs and that sort of thing. Here we're doing RAG on, actually like database rows. So this might be useful for something like being able to chat with, like your retail inventory, like to have users chat with retail inventory, something where you already have data that's inside a Postgres database, and you want to be able to ask questions about the rows in the database. So we are using PostgreSQL, and we can run it both locally because Postgres is entirely open source, so you can run it locally. And then in the cloud, we use Azure PostgreSQL Flexible Server. And for our being able to do vector search, we're using the PG Vector extension, which once again is open source, and we can also use it on Azure. So let's just go see what it's like, right? So here it is deployed. So we can ask about hiking shoes, and actually Wallace even asked the same question earlier in the AI Studio demo, because I'm actually using the same sample data as the Contoso chat one. So what you can see is the answer streams in where it's answering questions, and we also see citations, right? So it's RAG when you see citations because that indicates that we've sent sources to the model, and the model has cited their sources, and that's really important because it lets users actually investigate to see like, okay, did that really work? And then we can click on the little light bulb here to see a thought process to break down the RAG process, right? So actually, I'm going to start off with simple RAG just to be able to show the simpler breakdown, and then we'll do the advanced RAG. So here I'm going to ask the same question. Okay, and we got a different answer. And if I look at the thought process here, right, first, we have this question, best shoe for hiking. And I use that to search the Postgres database. And I am doing what's called a hybrid search, which means that I'm doing both a vector search and a text search. And then I'm combining those results together. And I can show you the code for that. So basically, here's our vector search. And you can see that I'm, ordering by that's either the cosine similarity operator or the inner product. Both of them will work in this situation. Then I'm doing a full text search using Postgres full text built in. And then I combine them together. And this is an algorithm known as reciprocal rank fusion, which is a way of gathering together results from two different queries and then joining them and coming up with final results. So that's the the hybrid search. So we've got those hybrid search results. And then what we do is we take those results and we pass them to the large language model, right? So I say, hey, you are someone that answers according to the sources, answer only according to the sources, stay on topic here. And we also tell it how to do citations. And that's really important so that we get citations out in a reliable manner. And then we say, here's the user's question, and here are the sources for that question, right? And we literally just concatenate the rows of, the rows and columns of the table, with the little new lines here. So that's what we send to the LLM. And then we get back the answer here. So that is a simple RAG flow. Now let's move on to advanced RAG flow. I'll do the same question. And you'll see different results. And the reason we see different results, there's multiple reasons why you see different results from LLM, right? One is that if our temperature is above 0, that's creativity, like we're going to get lots of results. But even if your temperature is 0, the only way to get reliable results is if you also set the seed parameter. So that's a good thing to do when you're running evaluations. But here, now I've done a more advanced flow. And so in an advanced flow, the first thing we actually do is we take the user's query and then we turn that into a good search, right? So instead of best shoe for hiking, I simply search for hiking shoes. And that's better. We don't need to say, we don't need to pass the word best to our, to our hybrid search. And then we get back results, and then we send it. So really the main thing here is this query rewriting phase. And that is particularly helpful if you're doing multi-turn conversations, right? So if I type here like other options, hopefully this works, because other options on its own is a horrible query to send to a search engine, right? If we had just sent that using the simple flow, we would have gotten really weird results, because other options, what does that even mean, right? Now, if we look at this thought process, what you see is that once again, it turned the user's question, other options, into hiking shoes, which is exactly what we want, right? That is the correct query to do. And then we pass the whole conversation history to the LLM with their question here. So this query rewriting phase is particularly helpful when you have this multi-turn RAG. All right, and then finally, I wanted to show a way that we can use function calling. So Lori mentioned be able to make agents, and agents use tools and functions. So here I'm using function calling as part of the query rewriting phase in order to generate SQL filters. So if the user asks a question like climbing gear cheaper than 30, I can't simply use that for a hybrid search, right? So what I want to do instead is actually come up with a SQL filter that's going to limit the rows to ones where the price is less than 30. So I use function calling and say, hey, suggest a price filter that I should do. So it says, okay, I think you should do price less than 30. And let me show you what that looks like here, query writer, right? So these are the actual function definition that gets passed into OpenAI, right? So you say, come on, tell me a search query, tell me a price filter, tell me a brand filter, right? And I can do these for any of the columns. So this is a form of text to SQL, but it's a very, very constrained text to SQL. There's other solutions, and I think look like LlamaIndex has a text to SQL sample, which would do like, they would take a user's text and turn it into any sort of SQL query. Here, I'm really constraining it because I'm thinking of it doing, this is like a user facing RAG chat application, and I want to constrain how much they can do against the database, right? But it works really well for this sort of situation. Okay, all right, so that's RAG. I could talk about RAG all day. I should stop. Yes, this was deployed with AZD, right? AZD, we're here for AZD. So AZD, so I ran AZD up, and I just did it actually during the call. And you can see first it packages. This is a container app, so it's packaging, building and packaging the app. Then it does the provisioning. And so here you can see we've got our OpenAI, we've got our Postgres, we've got container apps. Then I have a bunch of post-provision hooks, right? So if we look at the Azure.yaml, you can see the post-provision hooks. I've got this setup Postgres database, setup Postgres Azure role, and then setup Postgres seed data, right? And so these are helpful for seeding data, also for using managed identity. So this sample uses passwordless connections to Postgres, meaning that it actually, instead of sending a password to the Postgres database, it's actually sending an Entra token. And currently it does require a little bit of setup to do that. And also requires some setup in your Python code as well, and to refresh the token. So here you can see I have this refresh code here that will actually, every time this engine tries to reconnect, it will attempt to update the password to the new Entra token, right? So a little bit of effort to get this passwordless going, but it's pretty cool to not have to worry about passwords leaking for databases, right? And so that's why I went through the effort of, setting up all these hooks. So you can see that the hooks run and they create the database and the tables. They set up the identity for the app so that it can access the server, and then seeds the data, and then finally deploys, and we have it up. Now, what I was working on yesterday was monitoring. So I set up a monitoring dashboard, and it actually opened up in my other browser. let me open it up in the one that's streaming. So here, it's gonna redirect to the dashboard. So when you run AZD monitor, it just tries to find whatever dashboards associated with the resource group. So what you can see is, my server activity. Let me limit to the last hour, because what I did is that I just ran a load test using Locust. So this was my load test, and I ran it just just before this call. And so I was just, sending a bunch of requests to the app, simulating users, just so I could build up some data for this dashboard here, right? So this is basically me running the load test. And so I could actually investigate, the failed requests here. They're probably all rate limit errors. This is my guess, because they're all rate limit errors. Because I haven't increased the capacity of OpenAI. I think I'm at just like 30 tokens per minute, which is not 30,000 token per minute, which is not a whole lot. And that's one thing that's really valuable when you're doing load testing, is you realize like, oh wait, I need to up my limit. I better go into my OpenAI account and raise my limits. So that's something really cool, is that you can run AZ monitor, get that dashboard up, and then investigate any sort of issues that you see. You could also look at general performance and dig in to the traces. And here I'm actually looking into the performance here. So you can see that the biggest part is obviously the chat completion calls. Those are always going to take the longest. And but it is interesting to see how long my Postgres calls are taking, and see whether that's reasonable or whether I think I can improve them. All right, so there we go. So we did AZD up, we did AZD monitor. We've also got a workflow. So that's with AZD pipeline config. I've already got it set up. So you can see here, deploy with AZD. This is the workflow I set up using AZD pipeline config, right? So I set that up, and it set up all my GitHub credentials to be able to run this. And so that means every time I merge to main, it is, checking everything out. It's logging in with Azure. It's provisioning. So doing that same thing we saw locally. It's deploying and then cleaning up. And you actually don't run the post provision hooks in CI. So I have a little check for that. And there you go. And it all gets deployed. And that means if we accidentally broke something, which we actually did yesterday, we will get told on, right? So here we pushed a big restructure, which was a great restructure. However, it did break our workflow, and so we immediately fix it up. So it's really nice to have the workflow running, verifying that everything can deploy properly. And yeah, and John's in the chat. So yeah, this was John's big restructure, and you know, that's fine. I think what we consider, like, we also could consider running this sort of thing, you know, actually as part before merging to main, right? Like you could merge into a staging branch or something like that. So there's lots of options for when you're actually using this in your, you know, production setting, right? Like I remember at Khan Academy, we would never merge to main. We would first deploy, make sure all the canary tests and the smoke tests, all of those tests were good. And then only once everything was good, and even like we waited like an hour after, that is when we merged to main. Right. And that's, I think, actually a pretty nice approach for your production applications. So you have all those options with AZD. All right, so I'll stop showing now because we have more to show. But if you do want to get started with this, you can see the URL is in the chat. So come on over, join the fun. We're having a good time this week, you know, doing lots of pull requests. John implemented streaming yesterday, which is great to be able to demo today. So try it out and give feedback.
Thanks so much, Pamela. That's awesome. We put a link to the template in the chat, and we'll add another one at the end in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the call, Pamela.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Chris, who is a customer engineer and has been working with us on Aspire. Hey, Chris.
How's it going, Kristen?
Good, good. Excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me here. Real excited to talk about Aspire and how it enables AZD and how the pieces work together. So real excited to show that.
Yeah, I think last time we were on a mini Aspire tour for Build and got a lot of feedback since then. So really excited to have you on the show and bring back some Aspire stuff to show to the community. So please take it away.
Yeah, and yesterday we had this big .NET Aspire Developer Day, so this just kind of builds on that. Let me go ahead and share my screen just to refresh people. When we talk about Aspire, this is our opinionated stack that lets you compose via code different components, like using Redis and having references between our different services, and also setting up defaults, like really smart defaults for applications around like logging and health checks and service discovery and resilience. And so this is one of our starter applications. And what's great is, I can start it up. And if I'm using something like a database or I'm using something like Redis, this is going to not only compile my application, but set up a dashboard for me that will let me see the state of my components, see where they're running from, see all their endpoints. I can access my front end and interact with it. I've got a Blazor application. We've got loading data from our server. And then because this is running in Aspire and in the dashboard, I can go look at the logs. I can see logs from all of my requests. I can look at my structured logs for all of the requests. And those are all based on OpenTelemetry. Lets me dive in and see the full trace from the web request to the middle tier, all the way into different services or caching. So this is a really, really great developer experience for debugging, and it just pairs so well with AZD. So I'm hitting F5, I'm debugging, and I'm interacting locally. What's the next step? How do I take this and get this running in Azure? Well, AZD has added support for all of this. And I'll actually go out to one of the documentation. So when we build the .NET Aspire application, we're actually building a deployment manifest. And this can be used to generate your application in a number of places. We can do it to Azure with AZD, and that will let us use container apps or other targets. There's also Kubernetes using Aspirate, but we're going to focus on AZD. And I think it's great if we take a look at some of the documentation. You can see it's all under deployment Azure, so there's some really good in-depth guides. But this image here, I think, really kind of highlights what's going on under the hood as we look at an application that we want to AZDify. So because we need that deployment manifest, this is built when we do a .NET build, AZD up will actually run that starter app host project to generate that manifest. And that is what's fed into AZD provision, AZD deploy. And if we look at our project, so, here's our project, we can see we've got, some files and folders. If I do an AZD init, it's going to ask me where how do I want to initialize? And I will use the code in my current environment. And it's going to scan the code. And a lot of times, if you do an AZD init, you might see bicep code being added or an infra folder being added. But when we're dealing with an Aspire application, we don't really need any of that. It's all documented and generated out of the manifest file. So this is already, you can see it's detected .NET Aspire. It can see the path to my app host project, and I can confirm that. I can give it a name if I want. So Aspire starter app. And it's generated my Azure YAML. Now, I don't see it in here. So I'm just going to switch to my other view for a second. Look in the folder, and there's my Azure YAML. And if I look at it, it is much smaller than you might see. We can still go ahead and add all of the pre and post provision scripts. We can add all sorts of hooks, but it's detected that it's an app. It knows the project, and it's going to run it in a container app. Now, I've already done this in VS Code, and we can see I've done a AZD up, picked my subscription, picked my region, and it started provisioning resources in Azure. It created a resource group, a registry, a log analytics workspace. It also set up my container environment, and it deployed out the different services for my backend, my cache, and my front end. And it also gave me an Aspire dashboard. I could also access that same dashboard I was looking at a minute ago with AZD Monitor. Again, that popped on the wrong screen, so I'll just move this over here. But this is running just like I saw in Canada East, and I deployed this. It took a couple of minutes, but it should be spinning up. And we should have that exact same experience I had locally, but running now in Azure. Come on. And while we're at it, let me try hitting my front end. Denied. Great. I'd done this earlier and it worked just fine. So if we go out to the portal either way, we can see all of our resources that got deployed. They're all right here. We can see that workspace. We can see our front ends. They're all set up as container apps. And I can, should be able to go out to my URL. I can see my same counter and my weather service. Those are all running. I will take a look and see what is going on with my Aspire dashboard, because that was working just a few minutes ago. But let's take a look at our workspace. All of the logs should be sent here from our applications. And of course, I have a lot of logs that I have to run. So here's our console logs from our system logs from our applications. And just like with any AZD application, we can AZD down when we're done and purge things if we need to. So we've got the full AZD experience. All of the documentation is out there, as I pointed out. So we can add in our workflows if we need to. All of that is well documented here, and we've even got, like I said, doing updates. We can just do an AZD deploy, that'll push it. Same with some of the infrastructure updates. If we change our infrastructure or provision, we'll automatically detect that. We can, it is an alpha feature, but we can try to output bicep if we'd like that. But this is a really great supported feature. So love the work that we've been doing since build. And that is Aspire with AZD.
That's amazing. Thank you
Yep.
so much, Chris. Do you, where would you suggest that people go to learn more about Aspire and AZD?
I would start with the Aspire deployment guidance here under Deploy to Azure. So right there, I'll actually put a link that we can share out where we can just deploy it to container apps using the AZD CLI.
Very cool. Cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Awesome stuff. Brilliant. Wow, I think that kind of wraps up the demos. I mean, Grace, what's on the next slide? What have we got?
Yeah, 1 second. There's a little lag when I start advancing again. So the last thing is a call to sign up for a future community call. We want the people in this community to be a part of this. We want to see what you're building. We want you to share what you're contributing with the rest of the community. So if you follow this short link here, you can fill out a form and tell us what you'd like to share with the rest of the community, and we'll be in contact with you to hopefully get you on one of our next community calls. We basically have them the 4th Wednesday of every month. So the next one is August 28th, I want to say, and they'll be from there on out the 4th Wednesday of every month. So if you're interested, visit that link. And I think we dropped that link in the chat as well.
Yep. And we have a couple of really cool demos coming up on the last, on the 28th of August. So we'll preview what it looks like for composability, how we're thinking about adding and removing resources. And a couple other exciting things. So we probably have room for like 1 or 2 more demos on the August call. And then we have September, October, etc. So come show us what you're building. We'd love to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. So I want to say a massive thank you to all the speakers. Thank you for coming along today, spending your time, and for all the amazing work that you've been doing with AZD and showing everybody. So yep, like they said, if you want to be a part of the show, sign up. It's a really awesome way to not only get exposure, but also show us what you're doing. We love to have you on here. We love to see what the community is doing with open source tooling. So with that one, we'll leave it there. And yeah, we'll see you in a month's time. Thank you ever so much. And goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.